Welcome to this full diet guide, and at the end of this guide I really hope I can help you. That I can help you understand the diet and the dangers of our modern diet. Because acting starts with knowing, and if we don't know certain things we can't act upon them. So today I'm really gonna dive deeper in the dangers of our modern diet and why it is dangerous, the rise of obesity, the rise of diabetes, and skinny fat people. You might have heard about them, and some things today you might know already, but I promise you I will give you valuable information today which you can actually use in your life. This modern diet is truly bullshit, and it was not until I discovered some seminars and YouTubers and doctors talking about this that I realized how bad it was. Before I was always just eating whatever I want, eating snacks and fast food, and it is actually crazy. Our modern diet is actually so disgusting. It's like 80% processed foods, full of chemicals, full of pesticides, Even if you go to the supermarket, I guess 80% of what you see in the supermarket are pre-made meals in a factory, full of chemicals. If you read the ingredient label, you will see 10 ingredients you don't even know because you didn't study chemistry. It's crazy, and we are so hooked on this stuff. We are so hooked on these pre-made meals, these snacks. It's basically the only thing we eat. It is for some people literally 80% of their whole diet. Look at the shopping cart when you go to the supermarket. Look at the guy next to you, what he has in his shopping cart, and compare it maybe compare it to your healthy shopping cart. I don't know if you have implemented this knowledge already or not, but if I go to the supermarket and I look to the shopping cart next to me, I almost have to laugh, because when I see what people eat, it makes me cringe. This is not gonna make you healthy, man. So 70% of Western people are obese or overweight. It's a huge problem. 50 years ago we didn't have this problem, but now it's crazy, and we see this this rise in fat acceptance. It makes me cringe when I see this. If you work out strictly for appearance-based reasons, you are fat phobic. I mean, yeah, I guess then I'm fat phobic, but you will see, all these some obese people tell you that it's okay to be fat. You should accept yourself the way you are. I mean, no, you should work out. You should live a healthy life. But it's crazy, man. It's quite dangerous actually, having so much fat. But you probably know that already. And not only obese people, it is a sad reality to see the physical health of many young men, of many young women actually declining a lot. When I go to the gym, when I look around me, most of the time I see quite skinny guys, and often they have a bloated belly almost, because these skinny fat people, they have a high percentage of fat, but they have no muscle, so they are not overweight, but they just have a really high percentage of fat. And we are entering a decline of physical health. And not only that, also, there is an actual decline in strength in this modern day. They actually did a study with guys in the 1950s, and they tested their bench press and their arm strength and their muscle strength, basically their squat strength. So and they've kept this study around for till today, and there is literally a decline in strength. People in the 1950s were much stronger than they were now. I think it's a long time, so I think it was their squat was 30 kilos more than it is today. And why would that be? Maybe because we work less in the field, maybe because we have a more sedentary lifestyle, or maybe because we are just eating crap compared to the 1950s. And to give you a small example of the decline of mental and physical health in our society, there have been a lot of new diseases which didn't even previously exist, a lot of new diseases. And for example, the rise of diabetes, in the 1950s, like almost less than 1% of the whole population had diabetes. Today it's more like 7 to 8% if you look at the statistics. It is crazy actually. Like this disease didn't even exist in the 1950s. 100 years ago it didn't even exist. And we have created a whole new disease because of this modern diet. I'm gonna talk to you about the obesity epidemic. So why are 70% of Western people obese? So we have to dive deeper into this. In the 1980s, they changed the dietary guidelines. They changed the dietary guidelines to reduce fat in the diet because they thought, well, if you just eat fat, you will become fat. So, but they forgot one thing, because not all fat is bad for you. So this is a bit of bullshit. So not all fat will make you fat. Fat is actually necessary for your body, to grow and to maintain energy levels. So now they have a lot of like zero fat products. You will see all these like zero fat products, like zero Coke, you know what I'm talking about. But there is a side effect. So if you reduce all the fat in the food, what happens is that the food will taste horrible. Like you need fat to make food taste nice. So what did they do? They bumped up the sugar to increase the taste, because if you bump up the sugar, it will taste nice again. So what did they do? They actually like reduced the fat of food, but they increased the sugar because they thought, well, fat is bad, and then sugar might not be that bad as fat, right? So today there is sugar in everything. Like there is literally added sugar in everything. They will add it to everything just to make it taste nice. And also because like sugar is like very, very cheap as an ingredient. But just if you like look at normal products, for example, a bread, I don't know the exact ingredients, but there's probably sugar in bread. And why do you think, like, why is there sugar in bread? Like, what? Like all these things, even like some vegetables in like canned vegetables, they will have sugar in them. Like 80% of things will have sugar in them. And I want to talk to you about the rise in sugar consumption. It is crazy actually. If you look at like the history, like in the 1500s, they didn't even eat sugar. Like the amount of sugar consumption was close to 0 kilograms if you look at this graph. Now we live in like 2023 and like sugar consumption is more like 70 kilo per person each year. 70 kilo. You know how many bags that is? That's fucking disgusting, fucking crazy. No wonder we have so many new diseases, So we are eating way more sugar than is even healthy for us. And there is literally no need for added sugar in our diet. I had a conversation with a friend once and he told me, but we need that sugar, right? I need sugar for my body to keep my energy levels high. If we don't have sugar, I won't have any energy. That's bullshit, because we have no need for any sugar in our diet. Like in the 1500s, they didn't even eat sugar, They ate everything without sugar. And today we eat everything with sugar. Even your healthy meals are consisting of sugar, Yeah, it is crazy. So sugar has no dietary advantages. No, nothing. It will give you, maybe if you like drink a can of energy drink, like a can of Red Bull, it will give you like a small boost of energy, but after that you will get like a huge like dip in energy. So to be fair, end of the line, sugar, it makes the food taste better and it is very cheap. Just to give you an example of the average sugar consumption in a family. So an average person consumes about 34 teaspoons of sugar each day. Like each day. And our liver can process only nine teaspoons each day. So there is like more sugar than our liver can actually like handle. So all this extra sugar surrounds itself around our organs because our liver cannot process it. So this presents itself with huge health dangers. To give you an example of, the teaspoons of sugar, like 1 can of Coke has about 7 teaspoons of sugar in it. So we have there is a huge rise in sugary drinks. Before there weren't like any sugary drinks, but today some people, that's the only thing they drink. They only drink like sugar or like some sugared water, and there's like 40% more sugary drinks than like 30 years ago. And today it's crazy. They even have 2-year-olds getting their like teeth extracted because their teeth are all rotten because they have been drinking sugary drinks. Their parents have been giving their children sugary drinks, and these kids are 2 years old. It's fucking crazy. I've heard some stories about some parents, just giving their kid a can of Coke, their 2-year-old a can of Coke, and this person asked that mother, like, why are you giving your kid Coke? Well, because he likes it. Like, are you fucking mental? That kid probably has his teeth extracted now because of this crazy habit. Like these children's teeth can't handle these chemicals in this kind of Coke. So, and there's also like a huge sugar addiction. So it is not only like in our food and everything, but we are also addicted to it because of dopamine. But I will talk about dopamine later on. So why is sugar even bad? So we talked about the rise in sugar consumption, and I told you sugar is bad, but why? It is not because of the calories, because like sugary stuff contains a lot of calories, but it's not because of that. It's because sugar is almost the same as alcohol. And I've watched some very interesting seminar about this from a doctor, Dr. Lustig, maybe you know him. So he talked about the thing that like sugar is almost the same as alcohol. So like if you try to make alcohol, you need to add sugar so your thing can ferment and it will turn into alcohol. So sugar is basically the state before it turns into alcohol. The only difference is that alcohol goes to your brain to make you drunk. Sugar doesn't. Sugar goes directly to your liver. So alcohol also goes to your liver, but also to your head, right? So it's almost, and if you actually look at the health dangers of sugar and like alcohol, it's almost the same. So it's like giving your 2-year-old a beer, It's like crazy. So your liver needs to process the sugar because like it is a poison which needs to go out of your body. And I told you that like 9 teaspoons of sugar a day is like the max your liver can process, right? But like even 9 teaspoons is bad. That's the same like if you drink like a few beers each day, right? And there will be a certain amount of alcohol your liver can process each day. So, but even a small bit is bad. You cannot say, well, if I just eat a small amount of sugar, it's good for me, So like 9 teaspoons of sugar is like the max your liver can process, but that does not mean you should like just eat 9 teaspoons of sugar each day, because it is still bad. You should minimize it to 0. So like it is crazy, like the rise in sugar goes hand in hand with the rise of all kinds of new diseases and metabolic syndrome. Maybe you've heard about metabolic syndrome, but metabolic syndrome is like a medical term for diseases like diabetes, high blood pressure, and like obesity. And these diseases cause a lot of like stroke and heart disease. So overall, sugar is one of the main reasons of a lot of diseases these days. Even if you like, we had this like COVID pandemic, and I always told people like the COVID pandemic wasn't that bad because look at the obesity pandemic. Like the obesity pandemic like had much more fatalities than the COVID pandemic ever did. It is like the true hidden pandemic and nobody talks about it. It's crazy, you know. When we had this COVID pandemic, everybody started like acting like crazies, you know. And like we had a lot of deaths, so we had a lot of dead people. So that's bad, right? But why not talk about the elephant in the room, like which produces much more death, and that was like diabetes. I'm gonna talk about visceral fat, and you might be telling yourself, well, I'm not fat, so I'm not in danger of any health issues, right? I'm still healthy. Look at my body. I'm not fat. So I had this friend. He told me exactly this thing. I told him about his disgusting diet because he actually had a disgusting diet, like consisting of a lot of snacks. And I told him like, you should quit that shit. And he was like, well, as long as I'm not getting fat, I don't need to change my diet. And this is bullshit. Just because you look healthy doesn't mean you are healthy and not in danger of diabetes and things like this. So visceral fat is a thing, is a sort of fat, like not a healthy sort of fat, because it is stored around the organs. So normally when we have fat, it is, stored on top of our organs, on top of our belly and body. But this visceral fat actually goes around your organs and actually causes like pretty severe health dangers for your organs. So the thing is, with visceral fat, it is hard to see because it stores itself around the organs. So with normal fat, you will see it because it will store itself on top of your belly. You can actually see it, but with visceral fat, you can't, because it's around your organs. It is inside of your body. It's not on the outside, it's in the inside. So how is visceral fat made? Well, visceral fat is made because of excess in sugars, like eating too much sugar. And if you eat too much sugar, and too much processed foods, your body will turn this into visceral fat. So this modern diet with high sugary processed food is a main cause of visceral fat. And that's crazy, because that's when lean people become diabetic. So before we always thought, you only got a chance of becoming diabetic when you are fat. But that's no longer the case. Today we have a huge increase of actual skinny people becoming diabetic. It's like, and you don't want to have diabetes. Believe me, I've seen some gruesome. Never mind. So today we see the rise of skinny fat people, and you might have heard this term, skinny fat. I think I've talked about it before in this guide. So people who have no muscles at all and who are actually pretty high in body fat overall. They might have even a sort of belly. And those skinny fat people are not healthy because their percentage of fat is way too high for their body. And you might heard about this diet, if it fits your macros. So this is a sort of diet people use when they want to lose weight, gain muscle. And if it fits your macros, is basically, you can eat whatever you want as long as it fits in your calorie package. So you will get a max amount of calories, 3,000 calories, which you can eat. And you have your macros like carbohydrates, protein and fats, and you can eat everything you want as long as it's not higher than 3,000 calories. And this dietary method is promoted by so many people, and you might think, oh yeah, that's healthy, right? All calories are the same. And that's basically how this whole dietary method is built. All calories are the same. Just eat 3,000 calories. But that's bullshit. Not all calories are the same. And you know this now because of visceral fat, because of this sugar and processed foods produce a lot of visceral fat. So they will tell you, these fitness YouTubers will tell you well, if you just eat snacks and eat fast food, you can just eat it because it fits in your macros, it fits in your diet. And that's so bullshit, because if you eat snacks and if you eat processed foods like fast food and stuff, you will gain a lot of visceral fat, and you will get a lot of health dangers. And not only that, like, do you truly think you can actually grow on that stuff? Do you actually, if you go to the gym and you work out, do you actually think your body like has the right nutrients with just a chocolate bar or just a Big Mac? Do you actually think your body can grow? Or do you think your body can grow better on like true food, like healthy food which grows in nature? So like healthy foods are a lot more nutrient dense. Like they have a lot more nutrients which can actually help your body, and this processed food doesn't have a lot of nutrients in them. They do have a lot of calories though. But your body cannot function with all these chemicals. And that's the thing, you can even lose. So with this, if it fits your macros diet, the diet will work. Like if you are in a caloric deficit and you eat only crap food, but you are in a caloric deficit, so you eat less calories than your maintenance level. So that means you will actually still lose weight. So you will think, whoa, this dietary method actually works. I'm losing weight and I can eat whatever I want, right? And yeah, you can actually eat whatever you want, but the danger is not. So like actually losing weight and just being skinny is not necessarily a means of, well, you are healthy because you are like losing weight and you are skinny. No, because of visceral fat. So it's actually quite dangerous to eat a lot of sugar and to eat a lot of processed foods, also because of the chemicals. And they produce a lot of visceral fat. I hope this is very clear to you now. And I know snacks and processed foods are really nice and taste really nice, and they are made to taste really nice, right? But wouldn't you rather have a healthy life instead of a fun life at the moment? That's what you see with these diabetes people, who are diabetic. They will have a very fun life, eat a lot of sugar when they are young, but after a certain time they develop diabetes and they have to be in the hospital. And when they interview them, they always talk. They always ask them like, how did it happen? They always tell them like, well, I ate too much sugar. I enjoyed too much, of my time. So wouldn't you rather like have a healthy life overall than just have a fun life now and then in 20 years be in a fucking wheelchair because you can't even walk anymore because of diabetes, So many people are alive, they are like truly living, truly enjoying the fun life, but they are not like living. And it's not only impacting your health, it's also impacting your mental health, but we will talk about that later. To understand the rise of sugar, we should understand the food industry. So because they are responsible for putting all this processed foods and all this sugar on the market. So sugar is a substitute. It is very, very cheap. So what do? They replace like expensive products by sugar. So for example, like a salad dressing, instead of putting like this expensive oil, expensive fat in them, they just bump up the sugar to reduce the price of the actual product, like the producing price of the product. So it is crazy. The sugar has a role of reducing the price because sugar is like really, really cheap. And that's one reason why there's so much sugar in everything these days. And the food industry is actually the biggest market on the planet, like the biggest, or one of the biggest, because like you will see it everywhere. Everywhere in the supermarket, you will see these chocolate bars and everything around you. It's like a huge market, and there's a lot of money to be made there because a lot of people are addicted to them. So, and their goal is like making as much money as possible. And why? So why would they tell you it's actually bad? Why? Because they want to make as much money as possible. They want to sell as much chocolate bars to you as possible. Why in the hell would they ever tell you it's bad, right? And that it's quite funny because You would think the government has like a very active policy in this, right? Well, because if something is bad, the government should have a very strict policy in that to prevent people from eating the bad things, right? Like they do with smoking, but they are actually not quite doing that with like processed foods and sugary foods. And I think one of the reasons is because like it is the biggest market on the planet, one of the biggest, and there's a lot. So these CEOs of these like companies which produce these foods have a lot of good ties with the people in the government. So and you know how these things goes, right? The one with the power can make all the policy rules. So if the factories are like very, very big and have a lot of power, also a lot of political power, they can like alter the rules a bit, right? They can prevent certain ads from spreading. So why would they ever tell you it's actually bad? They want to make as much money as possible, and they don't really care about your health. They only care about making money, to be fair. And they will argue people can make their own choices. People can make their own choices. If you walk in the supermarket, people can make the choice to go for the healthy food. They don't have to eat those chemicals. They don't have to eat those chocolate bars. And they do have a point. But advertising has us bombarded with these things, Everywhere you walk, you will be bombarded with advertisements of the newest Magnum, the newest Big Mac, and all these things. If you walk on the streets, if you go on YouTube, all these sugary ads. And if you walk in a supermarket, often like it is crazy how if you walk in a supermarket, like the last aisle you will cross is the aisle of the snacks, because you will think, well, why not? I went to the supermarket, I have to like I can get a little snack, right? And this is how they do it. This is how they like influence your mind a bit. And like if you look at smoking, there isn't any advertisement for smoking anymore, right? But there is for snacking. And like diabetes and all these diseases are like a much more severe problem than people actually dying from smoking. It's actually crazy, but I think that's because the biggest bucks are made in the food industry. We will talk about hormones for a bit, because eating sugar and processed foods are not only bad for your physical health and visual fat, but also have a huge impact on your hormones and the way you are actually feeling. So you should be aware of that. So it's very important to stay with me for a while now, because it's gonna be a bit complicated here. So I will try to explain it as best as possible. So we will talk about basically two hormones, leptin and insulin. Leptin is the hormone that actually signals your brain you have had enough. So after you have eaten, leptin will kick in and will tell you you are full now, you've had enough to eat. But after eating sugar, after eating a lot of sugar and carbs, your insulin spikes, like goes up way higher than normal. So if you eat normal food, your insulin will go up a bit, right? But when you eat processed food, your insulin will go up way higher. And what is the effect of your insulin actually going up this high? Well, because your insulin is going up this high, because your insulin is spiking so high, it is stopping the leptin signal. And remember, leptin was the signal that told your brain like you have had enough to eat. So the insulin prevents your leptin from working properly. So what does this mean? Well, because your leptin isn't properly working because of this insulin, it's not telling you that you've had enough. It stopped working. Your leptin is actually telling your body you are starving. It doesn't give you the signal that you are full anymore because of this insulin. So you will still feel hungry. So and that's when you overeat. You probably can relate to me with this thing. So like if you eat something that contains a lot of sugar, like if you eat a chocolate bar, no way you would only eat like one little piece of the chocolate bar. You would eat the whole chocolate bar, right? And this is because even if you are full on sugar and stuff, you you'll just continue eating. And that's just when binge eating happens. And I have had this problem where I would eat like a few chocolate bars, and I would think, I want more. I'm really full, but I'm still hungry. And like, you know this feeling, like your hormones are like all fucked up, telling you you're hungry, but you still want to eat. You're also full, and yeah. And that's why it is so hard to stop. So just to give you a small recap, so leptin is the signal that tells your brain like you have had enough. You've had enough to eat. But when you eat like a lot of sugar and a lot of like processed foods, your insulin spike really, really high. And because of this spike, your insulin will tell your leptin, will interfere with your leptin, so your leptin isn't working properly anymore, so your leptin can't give you the signal that you are full, and you will still have the feeling that you are hungry even though you are actually full. And there is another side of this. Insulin is actually the hormone that turns your food into energy. But if you eat too much food, your insulin will actually store this food as like energy for later and turn it into fat. So you see a lot of teen boys these days like eating 300 calories more than 50 years ago. They actually did a study where they would like actually test the average amount of calories which people would eat. And teen boys these days eat about 300 calories more than they did 50 years ago. 300 calories more, and that's a lot. And that might be the reason, that might be the reason why people are so fat these days. And why are they eating 300 calories more? Well, that's because of the rise in sugar. That's because their leptin isn't working properly, Like the story I told you before, this is the reason why people are eating way much these days. Way more calories than even should. To understand insulin fully, you should understand the glycemic index and the glycemic load. And are you still with me? Hold on, because now it's getting interesting. I know it's a bit hard to follow, but just a few more interesting minutes. So there is this thing called glycemic load. And this is basically how different foods affect your insulin differently. So there is a difference in like healthy food and like processed foods and how they actually influence your insulin. And this is what I told you before, because when you eat a lot of processed food, your insulin spikes way more. And this is basically the bigger glycemic load they have. And you can see the glycemic loads of food in the glycemic index. And this is an index of how different foods affect your insulin actually. So when you have foods which have a high glycemic load, they produce a lot of insulin. And when you produce a lot of insulin, you produce more fat. And that's also one reason why if you have a food which is high in the glycemic load and which is high in producing insulin, you will also produce a lot of fat. So there was a very interesting study a few years ago. They had 3 groups of people. So one group was eating like foods which was very low on the glycemic index. And they had a group which was very high on the glycemic index. So guess what was the difference between those groups? Well, so what they saw with this high glycemic load group is that they actually had a rise in insulin. And after that, they had a crash in blood sugar. So they first had like a huge boost of energy, but afterwards really fast they had like a huge crash below energy, and the energy actually went below baseline. So they actually felt kind of like tired because of this. So first they had like a lot of energy and then they felt really tired. And another thing they found out was that the next meal they ate about 650 calories more than the other 2 groups. And that's crazy, That's crazy, 650 calories more. And so just to give you a small recap, because this group was eating like foods which were high on the glycemic index. So that might have been like processed sugary foods, you know. They actually like ate 650 calories more in the next meal, and they also had like a huge spike of energy first, and then they had like a huge dip, and that's not something you want. You want your energy levels to be like constant, you know, the same. You don't want your energy levels to go like this. And one other thing they found out was that this group, which had a low glycemic load, actually was less hungry overall, and they felt more full after a meal. And that was also the reason why they ate less calories than the high glycemic load group. But a high glycemic load is not always bad. So if you see foods which are high on the glycemic index, they are not always processed foods. You have always also got like foods like sweet potato and stuff like this. They are also high on the glycemic scale. So not all foods which are high on the glycemic scale are necessarily bad. So if you only eat like sweet potato, then it might be bad because you're only eating that. But when you eat a meal, you're not only eating potatoes, right? You have something like vegetables, I hope, and like meat. So you have a whole meal actually consisting of like foods which are high on the glycemic load and which are low on the glycemic load. So it evens out, right? But if you eat like foods which are like very processed and with high sugar, chances are they are very high on the glycemic load overall, and you will have this effect. So the main takeaways, if you don't understand, the main takeaways about this, if you don't understand it fully, it's no problem. The main takeaway is like just avoid highly processed foods because they are very high on the glycemic index. And and if you want to know which foods are high and low on the glycemic index, just Google it and you will find out. It's very easy. I will put up a list now about the carbs you should be eating if you want to find out. Come on. So just to give you a recap about everything we have learned so far, and I think we have learned a lot. So if you are still with me, congratulations. So that means you are actually willing to learn. You're actually willing to implement the right knowledge. So that's a great thing to see. So the first one is all calories are the same is bullshit. So if it fits your macros diet, it's not the way to go. Not all calories are the same. And this is because of visceral fat. So if you eat a lot of processed foods, they cause a lot of visceral fat, and it will actually affect your health without you even seeing it. So you will be skinny and even be unhealthy as fuck. So, and also these like processed foods contain a lot of chemicals which are not beneficial for your body to actually grow. So if you go to the gym and you only eat chemicals, snacks and processed foods, chances are you're not going to build some muscle. So there is also a huge difference in glycemic load in processed foods. So processed foods have a higher glycemic load and they influence your insulin way more. So if you have a high insulin, you make more fat. Another thing is high sugar and high carbs affect your insulin way more, and because of that, they will distort your leptin signal. So your leptin signal is the signal that tells your brain after you have ate, I've had enough. So this insulin distorts your leptin signal, so you can't feel like you've had enough and you want more. You're overeating. That's why you're eating like 650 calories more after eating a high sugary meal. Another thing is these processed foods are probably very high in sugar, and there's probably a lot of added sugar in there which isn't even supposed to be in there in the first place. And if you eat another thing is if you eat like a lot of if you eat food which is high in sugar, highly processed, high on the glycemic load, it will distort your energy. You will first get a quick boost of energy, but afterwards you get a huge crash in energy, and you don't want that. You want your energy levels to be stable. So the dangerous thing is about processed foods is it doesn't affect your health directly, and it's the same with smoking. It probably doesn't affect your health directly. You won't be sick the next day, you won't be dead the next day, and that's the thing with a lot of diseases. They affect your health directly. So if you have a disease, for example, like a COVID, you will directly feel the results directly. But the thing with processed foods and sugary foods is that you will not feel it directly. You will feel it in 30 years after you even can't change it anymore. And that's the dangerous thing about it, because you cannot change the past. So if you have spent your whole life eating shit food and now you're sick because of that, 30 years later, you cannot change your past, So the thing is, you have to eat healthy now to prevent such things from happening now. So if you've already, got diabetes, you can say, well, I will just eat healthy now and I will not have diabetes anymore. It doesn't work like that. So too bad for you. You have learned so much today, and that's a very good thing. And because you know certain things, you can act upon them. So how to actually implement all the knowledge you have learned today? So I would say the first thing is stop eating snacks, or at least minimize them, see them for what they are, see the dangers of them, because you now know this. Stop eating highly processed foods. That's another thing. And not only snacks are highly processed. For example, maybe we should talk about this. What is processed foods, right? What is processed foods? Well, processed foods, we can define them basically by saying processed foods are foods which contain about multiple ingredients. So if you actually see the ingredient list of a certain processed foods, you actually see 3, 4, or maybe even more crazy ingredients in there. So you should be eating healthy food. So healthy foods are single ingredient foods. So if you look at the ingredients list of potato, the only ingredient in there is potato. It isn't that hard. It actually grows in nature. So processed foods, and you can even say bread. You would think bread is somewhat healthy, right? But it actually kind of isn't, because there are a lot of chemicals in them, and they are processed foods, because bread doesn't grow in nature. It is containing multiple ingredients, so it is a processed food. But not all processed foods are necessarily bad. So it's not this black and white. So if there's more than one ingredient in there, it's bad. No, but you should make sure your diet consists of 95% healthy unprocessed foods, and you can eat 5% processed food. That's no harm. But don't be like 90% of people these days and eat 80% processed food, because that's gonna fucking destroy your health, and you know why now. So there are different levels of processed food. So like I told you, not all processed foods are equally bad. So there are different levels, and I don't know the exact levels, but we can make 3 easy levels here. So you first have the natural foods, which actually grow in nature. So then you have level 1 of processed foods, which are minimally processed foods, which they have been in a factory, but they have not been crazily processed. For example, for preservation purposes only. For example, dried beans or dried raisins. They have been in the factory to be dried, but that's the only thing. Nothing is added to them. So they are quite healthy actually for you. Or they have been in the factory to be packaged or something like this. So level 2 is normally processed foods, which contain about 2 or 3 ingredients. For example, oils and breads, because oil in itself doesn't grow in nature, but it's made out of olive olives, right? And if you have bread, it's like a few simple ingredients. And if of course there is like a huge difference in like bakery bread and like supermarket bread and in the amount of chemicals that's in there. So I would say bakery bread is definitely much healthier for you. But let's go to level 3, like highly ultra processed foods, and a lot of people are eating that shit. So these are foods with a lot of artificial sweeteners and extra colors in them, coloring. And you know, these are the foods which have a lot of ingredients in them, and like you will need a science degree to even understand the ingredient list. And you wanna avoid these foods as much as possible, really. So I've actually got some amount of processed foods in my diet. So I would say my wraps like are pretty much processed, which I eat. But that's like the only thing, and I eat like 85% chocolate. But that's also like processed. But the other stuff I eat are like mainly fully natural or level 1 processed foods. And I have to say I am very grateful because of that, and because I started like eating healthier, my body actually changed a lot from actually being kind of skinny fat, like a high fat percentage. I never was fully skinny because I was always a bit muscular, but I had a lot of fat. But after I started like eating healthier, the amount of fat on my belly like actually significantly decreased, and it is actually quite hard for me to regain that fat. And I also feel a lot better, because if you eat a lot of like sugary stuff, it will affect your hormones way more than only your insulin and leptin, and you will also feel like quite horrible actually overall. So if you start eating healthy, you will feel better in general. Like, yeah. So how to actually cook? So I've told you like, just eat more natural foods, right? But how to actually like implement it, how to cook, you might be asking yourself now. So this is actually fairly easy. So the thing I would suggest is that you would take around, depending on your calorie goals and stuff like this, like you will take around 100 grams of carbs, and a carb source might be like chickpeas, rice, couscous, pasta, or maybe potatoes. You will take about 200 grams of vegetables, and basically all vegetables are like okay. So I would suggest like carrots, leek, green peas, broccoli, and after that you will take 100 grams of meat. So chicken, lean beef, fish, and especially the last one, fish, is very important. I see not a lot of people eating fish these days, and I try to eat at least 2 times a week, like fatty fish like mackerel or salmon. And if you like don't like fish, you should be eating some kind of omega-3 fish oil supplement, because it's very healthy for you to have those like fish fats. So, and with these 3 variations of carbs, meat, and vegetables, you can make like thousands of variations. And if you use this, you can actually make really like good meals, and actually fairly easy meals. Like this is how I make my meals every time. And one thing I want to give you don't need sauce. So everybody these days just throws in a lot of sauce on their meals. They'll throw in like mayonnaise, ketchup, or some other crazy Szechuan sauce, just to make their food taste nice. And you don't need it. So I always thought, I needed sauce, and I always put sauce in there. So one day I just tried it without, and it was actually quite nice. So now I always do it without, because also in the sauce there is a lot of chemicals. It's like highly processed, a lot of sweeteners and like coloring. So if you really don't like your food without sauce, at first I would tell you just try it for a few days, because you will actually appreciate the food much more. You will actually like appreciate the taste of food much more. So, but if you don't like if you don't really like it, you should investigate how to make your food taste better. How to make how to use certain how to use certain ingredients, how to use salt, pepper, and certain curries or something like this. And if you can make something like that, with spices yourself, then it's actually fairly natural. But try to avoid these supermarket highly processed sauces, because and you can just investigate it online, how to make my food taste nice, how to make broccoli taste better. It isn't that hard. And if you live with your parents, it might be a bit hard sometimes, especially when your parents eat quite unhealthy, because you don't really have a say in what you're gonna eat, so you just have to eat whatever your parents are cooking, right? So what I would suggest, go to the supermarket with your parents and try to influence them a bit, because if you just tell your parents oh yeah, I don't want to eat that, I don't want to eat those unhealthy foods, I want to eat healthy today. And if you just influence them bit by bit, every day a little bit, to tell them I only eat healthy, I want to eat more healthier, and if go to them with the supermarket, try to get the healthier options, they will actually sort of listen to you almost. They might think that it's their own idea, but by you influencing them, you will actually influence your whole family, and so they can actually eat more healthy. And if they really don't want to listen at all, just make sure you buy your own foods. Just buy your own foods, and maybe even ask your parents to give you a bit of money to buy them those foods, because you want to eat more healthier. You want to eat more healthier so you can build more muscle, or you want to be just healthier overall. So I think they are reasonably in that. So this is the end of the diet guide. I hope I have given you true valuable knowledge, and you truly understand the dangers about our current diet. How you should actually eat healthy. And if you have any questions, just leave a comment, and I will personally answer these comments. And so I want to thank you for your focus, because I know it isn't easy to focus for, I don't know what it is, 1 hour, 1 hour 30, I don't know. But this means you are truly looking for some valuable knowledge to actually implement, not just looking for some quick dopamine hit. And it wasn't easy, we talked about a lot of hard things to grasp, leptin, insulin, glycemic index, what? But I hope you have increased your knowledge. Spartans, prepare for glory.